Hey, and welcome to this week's Inbound Debate. As always, I'm joined by Nick Pateman, Dan Holt, and I'm your host, James McFarlane. And this week, I've had a haircut and I've got a new jumper, if everyone can just...
Are they Space Invaders?
I don't know. Nick said it's
super
quite
retro.
It's quite
Christmas retro.
Anyway, without veering off topic too much, this week we're talking about Grey Hat SEO and if it works and if it's dead. Now, before we go into the questions, what I want to do is just define in my head, or what I've kind of researched, what Grey Hats is kind of universally thought of as. Now, typically, it's the consensus that Grey Hat SEO is a mix between Black Hat SEO tactics and White Hat tactics. Maybe not as aggressive, pure Black Hat tactics, but still, manipulating Google's algorithm. So, guys, do we think that Grey Hat SEO is dead? Nick?
I think Grey Hat SEO is very much alive. I think it'd be hard to say it's not alive. I think that'd be very difficult to try and show evidence for. However, I think it's becoming more polarized. Now we're seeing, for me anyway, a lot more either Black Hat or White Hat tactics. So I'm talking about hacking someone's site on the very, very edge of Black Hat, and then just developing really great content and going after great links. There doesn't seem to be so much in the middle anymore, in that having a 90% keyword exact match anchor text distribution doesn't do what it used to do. You have to be a bit more kind of White Hat to get that natural profile. So I just feel things are a bit more in White Hat's favour, and then the people that know how to hack and do all these horrible
manipulations.
Manipulations and things. That's kind of taking off on the Black Hat side.
Dan, what do you think?
Personally, I'm still seeing an awful lot of the Grey Hat stuff that's not, kind of out and out, sort of unethical, but is unquestionably there to manipulate the search engines, such as, overly aggressive anchor text or perhaps acquiring links from questionable sources. Those sorts of things are going on in almost, probably 60% of the markets that we operate in and that our clients operate in. You see it all the time, and it's very, very frustrating, because obviously we preach against it all day long, but we see it working.
Yeah, I personally think that if you're doing a Grey Hat campaign, you're most likely doing a Black Hat campaign. I think if you're telling yourself, this is Grey Hat, this is in the middle, I don't think there's a line there. I think you're either White Hat or you're Grey Hat. I mean, White Hat or you're Black Hat. I don't see kind of a difference there. Now, if we don't think it's dead, just as a Grey Hat as a tactic, when will it be dead, if ever?
It's hard to put a time frame on it, but Google's, with Panda and Penguin, I think unquestionably they've made better progress in tackling spam and dodgy tactics, and I just feel that in 2 or 3 years, given how fast things have moved in just the last year, in 2 or 3 years, I think Google will have link quality down to a T. I think they'll understand exactly what's in a good link and what's in a bad link. I think they'll probably be able to spot good user experience, good design, and good content as well, because content's still quite difficult to understand. So I reckon in 2 to 3 years, Google will actually be able to kind of crack down on the Grey Hat stuff. But one thing I think they'll never be able to get hold of is this paid SEO. I just think with paid linking, with paid, it could be paid authorship, content writing in the future, it's always going to be underhand. Google cannot spot stuff that happens offline. If someone brings someone up and asks them to, here's $100,000 to do some massive Black Hat kind of technique, then they're not going to say no. There's a huge corruption in SEO, and there's no legal implications, so people are just going to do it.
What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the algorithm is a system, and any system can be manipulated. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's very difficult to know how long it will take to reach a point where it pretty much disappears as we know it. It could be 6 months, it could be 6 years. I think the real question is, in your particular market, at what point is it no longer viable? At what point is it no longer worthwhile? I think in most markets we've pretty much reached that point, but it's really tricky because there's all sorts of markets that our clients operate in where the sites, I'll give you one example, a particular client we've worked with a long time, about 3 years. We've had them in the top 1 or 2 for pretty much all of that 3 years. They've now dropped down to 4, and the 3 sites outranking them are all engaging in pretty questionable tactics. We could replicate those tactics, we could outrank them probably pretty quickly. The client would probably like that, but I don't think it would be the right long-term.
I think what you said is, for me, that kind of hits home, as in, it's not when it will die, because I personally think there'll always be a black hat tactic that you can use. There'll always be a grey hat tactic that you can use that would manipulate your rankings. But it's when it becomes no longer worth it. So your risk reward just gets shut down, and we see that coming along in certain markets. For instance, like in health, there's not as much kind of black hat, grey hat, especially in like baby and things. Whereas in payday loan market, it's going to get regulated in the next 3-6 months. So people just want to make money, rank for a month, that they don't care about it, and they're going to make $100,000 from that term.
I do disagree though on the system thing. I think it is possible to make a system that's that's impossible to exploit. We are just human beings. We have nowhere near the intelligence to actually dig into a machine like Google. We can't understand it. There's so many different things that go in. There'll only be more things going in, and it will become so vague and so not worthwhile, as you were saying with risk reward, that grey hat will just stop existing.
Well, it's a debate for another day. I mean, you've already said that certain paid forms will be here forever. If that's the case, I can't see why other methods of manipulation would be here as well.
Because that's manipulating the white hat way. You'd be paying for
One thing we will say is the SEO community loves them to think of themselves as a bit of a detective community. So you normally find that these big stories kind of come out.
Yeah. I'll buy you a drink, mate. The day that there's no longer any way to manipulate the search engines.
Oh, come on, that's up in the air, isn't it?
Okay. Well, thank you guys. You might even say we've come to the conclusion that you'd make grey while the sun's shining. Yeah?
I think that's a great.
Well, thank you very much, guys. This has been Nick Bateman, Dan Holt. As always, I've been your host, James McFarlane. This has been The Inbound Debate, and we'll see you next week.